Tonight, 2 new generators due to arrive to help with the power situation. Niue signs diplomatic relations with Israel. And there are 2 new cases of COVID-19 on the island. Whakaalofa here and welcome to tonight's bulletin of BCN News. Leading the news tonight in the latest update about the power situation. Since the 2 engineers arrived this week, they have been able to restore and stabilize one of the generators, improving capacity and avoiding power rationing for now. But the call to minimize power usage remains in place until 2 new replacement generators are flown up over the next few weeks. The situation is also hampered by the continuous wet weather impacting on solar power generation. The catastrophic failure to the prime generator on Tuesday last week is the second such failure of the generator rented from New Zealand last year, raising questions over the capacity of the staff at Niue Power to manage the system. Here's more on that story. In January this year, the prime generator also suffered major damage when Niue Power manager Brendan Kulasea was on leave overseas. The damage that caused a generator failure on Tuesday last week was much worse though. Pictures seen by BCN News showed a large hole on the side of the generator indicating some form of an explosion. These recurring failures is a concern about the capacity of the Niue Power staff, which was raised with the Public Service Commission earlier this week. Questions to the Public Service Commission about the capacity and the capabilities of the Niue Power staff to manage power generation, the power generation system, was responded by Commissioner Aida Talangi-Hekesi, who said that power, as with other sectors on Niue, is not operating at full capacity staff-wise, and this will be a challenge for the Niue Public Service Commission that they will need to work on going forward. The incident last week happened a few weeks after Brendan Kulasea departed the island last month at the end of his contract. Kulasea returned on Monday with one of the engineers from Tarakat, and this morning he told BCN News that they will continue to work on the other generator to avoid further power rationing. He said that the weather is also impacting on the solar power generation, and until the weather improves and the solar batteries can carry some of the load, Niue Power will continue to depend on the diesel generators. Kulasea said that people should still use power conservatively because last night they also noticed during peak hours that the load was very high. On Monday next week, a new generator will be flown up from New Zealand and another generator will be delivered the following week. Brendan Kulasea said that they realise the situation is not optimal and they are grateful for the public's patience as they work to restore power to full capacity as soon as possible. On Monday next week, a new generator will be flown up from New Zealand and another generator will be delivered the following week. There are 2 active cases of COVID-19 on the island as reported by the public health team. The 2 cases were reported on the government's COVID-19 dashboard yesterday. Head of Public Health Griselda Mokoia told BCN News that the public should test themselves if they are feeling unwell and those people showing flu-like symptoms. The message remains, test if you feel unwell. If you test positive, you should contact the public health team at the Niue Hospital so that they can monitor your condition. All positive cases of COVID-19 should isolate for at least 5 days and close household contacts should test daily. Rapid antigen test kits or RAT kits are available at the hospital. For more information, visit the government's COVID-19 website or call the public health team on telephone number 4100. The Controller and Auditor General of New Zealand, John Ryan, in his report to the Niue Assembly this week, highlighted a number of key matters identified during the audit, including his disappointment at the level of unauthorised expenditure in breach of the Constitution by the Niue government. The report to the Niue Assembly provided an update on the status of the audits of the Government of Niue and its subsidiaries. This was tabled at the last sitting of the Whanake Pule on July 31st and was referred to the Public Accounts Select Committee. The Niue government's financial results for the 5-year period ending 30th June 2021 reported a $15.3 million deficit, with the understanding that the 2022 and 2023 financial years are expected to be in deficit as well. After tabling the audit report at the Assembly on Monday, Premier Dalton Tagilangi in a press statement said that the Niue Cabinet endorsed the Auditor General's recommendations and that we can now focus on implementing improvements to current systems, processes and practices to ensure that financial reporting continues to be timely and the overall quality of the reporting is improved. The 37-page report identified several matters specified by the Auditor General that are not new and similar to audit findings in his previous reports to the Assembly, including this report, though, includes the response from the Niue government on each of the matters raised. Some of these key matters include concerns over financial sustainability, capability and capacity for robust financial management, donor funds and aid money management, unauthorized expenditure, control environment and internal controls, documentation of decisions, and the significant number of previous audit findings and recommendations that have not yet been addressed by the government. The Auditor General said that it is pleasing that there has been some improvements, but emphasises timely reporting as critical. The Niue government's financial results for the 5-year period ending 30th June 2021 reported a $15.3 million deficit, with the understanding that the 2022 and 2023 financial years are expected to be in deficit as well. In response, the Niue government said that the budget deficit and reliance on financial support from the New Zealand government was brought about due to the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. The government expects that these deficits will reduce over time, but did not address reliance on the New Zealand government or if it had considered austerity measures to reduce spending. BCN News also note the concerns raised by the Auditor General about the deficit between the total funds received from donors for specific projects and the balance outstanding for projects. According to the report, this represents a cash deficit for donor projects of $9.5 million for the period reported from 2017 to 2021. And in the previous report for 2016, this figure of a deficit on donor projects was $2.4 million, indicating that the government had continued to spend donor project funds on operational matters. The report also found that there continues to be a significant number of previous audit findings and recommendations that have not been addressed by the government or relevant subsidiaries. These include improvement in asset management, procurement policy and practices, and also revenue verification. Overall, the Auditor General's report paints a grim and bleak future for the government of Niue if they don't act soon to change those old practices and old habits. In a press statement, the government had indicated that there are processes already in place to address the recommendations. BCN News is aware that since becoming Minister of Finance in June 2020, Crossley Tatui has been instrumental in pushing for assistance to improve the capacity of the Treasury Department and also working on updating regulations, legal reforms, and working on introducing new policies for state-owned enterprises. Meanwhile, BCN News is still awaiting a response to questions sent to the Minister of Finance and to the Secretary to Government as to how much the government paid Audit New Zealand and Deloitte to produce these audit reports from 2017 to 2021. Israel's ambassador to New Zealand and the Pacific region, His Excellency Ran Yagobi, arrived on the island on Monday this week. And on Tuesday, His Excellency Yagobi and Premier Dalton Tagilangi signed a joint communique formalising diplomatic relations between the two nations. Both leaders welcome the relationship as they look forward to developing stronger ties with one another. I spoke with Ambassador Yagobi yesterday afternoon. As the 22nd country to sign diplomatic relations with Niue, Israel has an impressive international reputation for its dedication to research and development, spending around 5.4% of its GDP on research and development. I asked Ambassador Ran Yagobi why Israel wanted to formalize diplomatic relations with Niue.
We've always had good relations with the Niue High Commission in Wellington, where I'm situated as ambassador to New Zealand and to the region. And upon discussing Israel's accession to the ADB, the Asian Development Bank, we came with the idea, your High Commissioner and myself, to formalize the relationship. And one thing led to another, and since both governments were willing, the suggestion of the diplomats on the ground went all the way up, and now I am here. I have signed with the Premier on this wonderful historic document, not only formalizing our relationship, but allowing exchange of information, allowing more Israelis to come here. I think that the report like this one, but also in Israel, in parallel that is done, will raise some interest in tourism and maybe some trade.
Since 2020, His Excellency Ran Yagobi served as Ambassador of Israel to New Zealand and non-resident ambassador to the Cook Islands, Samoa and the Pacific region.
No, like most people on the island, we're probably the only thing that we would know of Israel would be Avi Rubin, who is Israeli, and he's been on the island for many, many years. But can you tell us or tell our viewers what sets Israel apart from all the other nations in the world that Niue have diplomatic relations with?
Well, besides Avi Rubin, hello Avi, Israel is a unique nation. There is the modern Israel. We celebrate 75 years of existence as a modern democracy this year, since 1948, as declared by the UN. But we are much more ancient. In a way, our birth certificate is the Bible, and the Jewish faith has preceded Christianity and Islam, the bigger monotheistic religions. I read my Bible in Hebrew, which is the original language in which the Bible was written, which is also a unique thing. Like Niue and other nations around, we worked hard to preserve our language, and Hebrew in its modern form is very similar but a bit different than the biblical one. We live also in an area that is much different. If you look around, you have water, we don't. You have the ability to grow so much in fertile land. I think everything here is green and lush, and the rain that doesn't stop. We pray for such rain. And we have taught ourselves basically to work and prosper under very harsh conditions. Both the land that is not fertile, mostly desert, the water that is not coming so often, and the neighborhood that is quite tough. Some of our neighbors did not yet realize that we are there and this time to stay. So there are conflict, unfortunately. With some we have managed to sign some peace deals, with some we are still in negotiations, and with others, unfortunately, we're still in a situation that demands, I think, a solution with the help of other nations.
Ambassador Yagobi speaks several languages, and before becoming ambassador to New Zealand, he served as Director for Combating Anti-Semitism and for Holocaust Remembrance at the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He also worked in Germany, Sweden, and in Brazil. He told BCN News that this week, Niue has signed on to become a member of the Friends of Israel Club. I asked him what are some of the benefits that will derive from this relationship.
It's very easy, as I presented in my talks with the Premier and with the Cabinet and other officials I've met. I went through farms, I've been to some installations here in Niue. I think there's much to do. Niue is now as a member of the Club of Friends of Israel, officially. Can send people for courses in Israel, can invite Israeli experts to advise here. Definitely is welcome to consider Israeli produce products, machines, technology, etc. I was surprised actually today when I went to the government farm and I saw at least 2 Israeli technologies already implemented there. One was the home biogas system that takes compost and manure and turns it into cooking gas and fertilizer. And the other was the drip irrigation system by Netafim, another Israeli company that people have installed there and have been working with, but we're not even aware it's made in Israel. So it was a pleasure to see already Israeli produce. There can be much more. We offer a variety of trainings and courses in the Pacific and in Israel too. People from the Pacific, and I already had some negotiations and even invited some people to take part and show some interest in this system of courses. Usually we provide the accommodation and the training in Israel. The sending party needs to just fill the forms and sometimes provide the voyage, the travel expenses all the way to Israel. It's a chance to learn about technology. Israel is known as a high-tech nation. It's a chance also to do some pilgrimage and link again to the biblical places. Most of them still bear the same name as they did 2,000 and 3,000 years ago.
His Excellency Ambassador Yagobi is married to Deborah, and they have 2 children. He is already looking forward to bringing his wife to visit Niue next time, when hopefully the weather will be more sun and not so much rain. A workshop on international fisheries governance took place earlier this week at the Niue Golf and Sports Club. The purpose of the workshop was to inform and support key stakeholders, government departments and non-government organizations, over the conservation efforts, especially with regards to fisheries within the local community and in the region. Here's Sarai Mangawa with more on this story.
The workshop was led by 2 key academics from the Australian National Centre for Ocean Resources and Security, otherwise ANCAS, Professor Quinton Hanich, and ANCAS Head of Students Ruth Davis. BCN News spoke with Professor Quinton Hanich yesterday morning.
There's a lot happening around the region on the tuna fisheries and the future of how the tuna fisheries are managed and developed. And Niue has been very active in those negotiations and has also been leading many of those negotiations. So today what we're here for is to talk to everybody and to better understand the stakeholder concerns and to also inform the stakeholders about what's actually going on.
One of the key objectives of their discussions and workshop yesterday was to support Niue in its fisheries conservation efforts.
So the South Pacific albacore fishery at the moment needs to be better managed. The productivity of South Pacific albacore has been declining, and for many fishing vessels it's barely viable. The catch rates just aren't good enough. So Niue and other South Pacific nations are cooperating to better manage the fishery and improve the profitability of the fishery so that, again, Niue can benefit from that important fishery. That's one of the key items. And then the other key item is at the end of the year, the Western and Central Pacific Fisheries Commission will negotiate how to also better limit the high seas fisheries. And Niue wants to ensure that those high seas are very well managed and also that Niue can participate in those high seas fisheries as well.
Professor Quinton says data management is also an important aspect for fisheries.
Data is fundamental to managing fisheries. It's really important for science and for stock assessments and understanding the nature of the stock and the status of the stock. It's also really important to make conservation and management decisions. So understanding how much fish we've caught will feed into the negotiations of how much fish we can catch in future. So it's an important component, and Niue hasn't traditionally caught much fish and reported much catch because of the nature of the EEZ, the waters around Niue. So what we also need to do is ensure that conservation and management decisions are based on other factors rather than just catch history. So we also talk about developing state aspirations, we talk about equal shares, that everyone should get a share, and other equity principles like that. But data is fundamentally important to fisheries.
Several parents have raised concerns because of over the child allowance. Some of these parents contacted BCN News saying that the child allowance for their children still under 18 years of age were cut off without first informing them. BCN News reached out to the Department of Justice, Lands and Community Services about the situation, but have yet to receive a response. Sarai Mangal with more.
The concerns of the parents confirms the general lack of legal awareness in the community about the child allowance. According to the Child Allowance Act of 1995, a child between the age of 14 years and up to 18 years of age who does not attend a recognized school in Niue will not qualify as a qualifying child for the child allowance. BCN News is also aware that several students have left Niue High School and are either in employment or looking for a job. In the current Education Act of 1989, a child with the consent of the parents can leave school from the age of 14. These are some of the concerns raised over many years by parents who have been waiting for the review and change of the Education Act. BCN News will follow up with the Education Department as to the progress of the review of the Education Act, which has taken more than 10 years but has yet to reach the Whanokepule.
A special presentation of the National Geographic Pristine Seas and the Niue Ocean-Wide Project 2023 took place last Friday evening at the scenic Matawai Resort. The special event was to present the final results and the findings of the Pristine Seas crew and their research here in Niue over the past few weeks on marine biodiversity, especially at the Antiope Seamount and at Beveridge Reef. Here's Raya with more.
Speeches were delivered prior to the presentation by Pristine Seas. One of the speeches included Minister of Natural Resources, Honourable Mona Ainu, where she announced that the Cabinet and Government of Niue have endorsed the deed of the ocean conservation credits for the Now Trust Fund.
On that note, today, there's a small announcement that the Cabinet and the Government of Niue has now endorsed the deed.
Tofia Niue President Coral Pasisi expressed her thoughts of appreciation and gratitude to National Geographic Pristine Seas and the people of Niue for this project.
So thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute privilege and pleasure to be a part of this wonderful journey of Now, which I hope will last forever. And I'm so happy to have young people here who are going to be following in behind us, older generators, to make sure that we carry that on into the future.
National Geographic Pristine Seas Chief of Staff Dan Myers explained the work of their team and mission in Niue.
Over the last 13 years, we've been working with communities and governments around the world, from the Russian Arctic to the Antarctic and everywhere in between, to support the conservation and protection of vital ocean areas. We've been working in Niue now since 2015, and this is actually our second expedition here. It's one of the few places in the world where we've come back because we think this place is so important.
Expedition leader Ryan Jenkinson says that if Niue were to ever need them again, they will return.
But what we're hoping is our work here from 2016 to now puts Niue in a position to have full management over their resources and a long-standing protection of their waters, and food and fish and tourism and everything in perpetuity. That's what we're here to do, is not to be here all the time, but to turn it over and let them take over both the monitoring that we can do and the research and everything. It's theirs, and that's what we're hoping to do, is to help them get started. But I can say unequivocally at any point, if anyone here needs us back, people will come back.
The night ended with Premier Honourable Dalton Tangelangi presenting a traditional spear, kato'ua, as a gift to the leaders of the expedition crew. Premier expressed his thoughts of appreciation and gratitude to the team for their work and support to Niue's marine biodiversity.
And the 13th Festival of Pacific Arts and Culture will, with the theme of Regenerating Oceania, will be held in Hawaii in June next year. The festival was postponed during the COVID-19 pandemic, will now be held from the 6th to the 16th of June next year. Earlier this week, the Department of Taonga Niue started the process to select the team to represent Niue at the festival. Artists, performers, filmmakers, designers, carvers and culture enthusiasts are invited to submit your name to the team at Taonga Niue if you would like or if you want to be part of the Niue delegation to the Pacific Arts and Culture Festival. You can send your name in before the 2nd of October. And that's our bulletin of BCN News for tonight. Before we end, though, a friendly reminder that the Lakapa Annual Village Show Day will be held this coming Saturday. So do go on up to support the folks there at Lakapa. Until our next bulletin on Tuesday next week, you have a wonderful weekend. Good night, none au revoir.